offseason is the most pivotal time you can lose somebody because rosters are a lot more fluid. The 40-man roster is the most important aspect of MLB The Show franchise, and it's important that you get it right by either having a complete 40-man roster or trimming that down some. It'll allow you to make trades. It'll allow you to know who you're going to call up next when it comes to September call-ups. It'll allow you to call up the next man up when it comes to injuries, and it'll allow you to possibly find that one missing piece you may find in the Rule 5 draft. These rosters are as of the most recent live roster update, but I will also jump into other save files to give you guys different examples so that you guys have an idea what you need to look for. 26 of this team's 40-man roster is actually pitchers, 10 of which being starters, 12 of which being relievers, 2 of which being closers, equaling 26. The other 14 are position players. If you have injuries off, literally none of this will apply to you because you won't have to worry about calling guys up and sending them down if you really have no intention of sending guys up and down due to injury. If you call somebody up or down, you're probably going to do so just because of talent. Somebody at the major league level is declining. Take a guy like James McCann, and you want to call somebody up like Samuel Basalio. To start an MLB The Show franchise, you can go into roster control and manipulate the 40-man roster that way, putting guys up you might want either in the minors or at the major league level, depending on where you see the future of the team. Again, no injuries, this is not going to be an issue. If you're playing with injuries and depending on what that slider is looking like as far as either gameplay and or sim injury slider, you'll want to adjust. I usually go with about 10 starters, maybe shave it down to maybe 8 depending on if I really think anybody is really ready. Like if you look at this starting pitchers menu real quick, they've got 5 starters. The AI, if you allow them to make the moves, they'll probably sometimes have 6, maybe 7 starters, at which 2 of them will be in the bullpen. This team has a couple guys in the minors, John Means because he's injured, and there are no pre-existing injuries unless you go into franchise mode, manually injure somebody, and go from there. Sometimes a guy like Jenier Cano, you'll end up with a guy who is pretty bad overall wise, and despite the fact they have mentioned in a previous stream that relievers overalls and ratings are kind of nerfed, it's gonna happen. So when you start your MLB The Show franchise, you're going to end up with 40 regardless. You won't even be able to back out because it'll ask you to save them. You'll sometimes see X's where it says 40-man or either of the 3 levels of the roster, lineup, or rotation, and you'll have to either fix it or press square, or believe that's X on Xbox, or whatever button it is, you know which one it is for your system, and you'll be able to auto do it that way. The AI tends to default to service time or overall, so do pay attention to that. I personally don't allow the AI to make any real moves because I feel like they'll jack things up. Just after spring training is the first time you're gonna have to make any real decisions as to who will be up on the major league roster, who will be in the minors, somewhere in the minors, it really doesn't matter. Still on your 40-man roster, available for call-up later in the year. I was gonna save this for later, but there is an injury on this Athletics team. He's gonna be out for 2 weeks due to a head contusion, and I think it might be about the 15th of March. Let's see. It is. Dalton Jeffries is now no longer injured, so he was only out a week, which is fortunate. So we'll auto utilize him, which usually means he'll just go back to where he started. And he's now hurt again, bro. It's a finger. Like, he should probably shut you down for the entire spring. Right? Spring training has now come to an end, and now you have to make a decision. You have to make decisions now. There are 40 guys on the roster. You cannot start a major league season with 40 men on the roster. This is a rebuilding team, but honestly, you're allowed to do what the hell you want. You can have a lot of guys who spend a lot of time in the minors down there. You can default to guys who have major league service time, like a Paul Blackburn. As a matter of fact, looking at some of these starters, some of these guys probably wouldn't start for other teams. Let me move myself. Boom. All right, yeah, we've got a couple of young guys here in Freddie Tarnock and Luis Medina. neither of which, actually Tarnak has literally 2 days of service time. So you'll have to send him down, and that'll cost you an option. Now you're allowed to send him up and down within the year, and it counts as one option, and every player has 3. SDS's default roster is jacked up to the point where in the rosters on the franchises I've started on this channel, everybody had 3 options. So everybody was 0 of 3 for minor league options. So I could literally call anybody up and down and it didn't matter. But there are legitimate guys who have no options left, and they've been in the league for ages. But the game, I don't know why they don't just automatically do it. It's not something we can do in the edit screen. So unfortunately, you kind of got to deal with what's there. I believe guys like Riding Roster, who they'll have their roster out later on in the year, they will have the proper minor league options and such. I don't know how they do it. I think they might go about going into a franchise, doing CPU roster control and exporting guys, but they work for SDS now, so they probably know some things that I clearly do not. Sending a guy down does use an option. So when we look on his player card, and behind my cranium, actually next to me, it'll say he's got 1 option used. Again, they can be sent up and down literally every day for the entire season, and it won't count towards any. In other words, you won't accumulate a 2nd option or a 3rd option. Later on, I'll talk more about that, especially outside of the season. But here in spring training, you should be thinking about a couple things. 1, backups. Guys get injured, assuming you play with it, and you have guys getting injured. It's going to happen throughout the year. Do what you got to do. You're going to have to call somebody up at some time. For pitchers, and I mean all pitchers, starters, relievers, closers, all 3, you can have a minimum of 10. If you have anything between 10 and 13, you're in good shape. You have 9, you're going to have a problem. And mind you, this is all at the major league level. If you've got 14, you've somehow called up a 14th guy and you didn't pay attention, you're going to have to send somebody down. Hopefully that doesn't use an option, and usually the way I handle it, I go about sending down the same guy I just called up, unless I have a really good reason for calling him up. Maybe somebody here at the major league level, say Dalton Jeffries, he's pitching like crap. This isn't horrible. Like, this is the A's for crying out loud. So you can kind of get away with this. This team is rebuilding. You can kick the tires on guys like that. So for him, say I send him down. I'm gonna send him down to AAA. This will use an option for him. He is currently at 1 of 3. So again, the up down, we can do that all day, all night, doesn't matter. It's not gonna affect that minor league option much, you know. But in my eyes, for a rebuilding team like this, I want to actually call up some of these younger dudes. Again, you do what you want. If you're going to play every game, maybe you want the best team available, and you're not going to really be concerned about some of these younger guys. So Luis Medina, he's got big potential, but he's probably going to struggle at the major league level. You probably want to send him down to AAA or even AA, despite the fact AA only has 2 more roster spots left. Every attribute matters in some way, shape, or form. You want to be thinking along the lines of, what does a guy bring to the table? Manny Pena, he's got some solid power. He's got solid vision and is a solid fielder. He ain't fast as most catchers are. He is 35 years old. Doesn't really hit righties, so he's either going to be a platoon guy, which that kind of depends on how you look at it. The game defines it as he doesn't even have a quirk for being a platoon guy, or a pinch hitter for that matter, so you kind of gotta play it by how you see it. Soderstrom is the tied for the 2nd best catcher on this team by overall. He's got an A potential. Manny Pena is old. I ain't gonna say old because I'm almost the same age as him. He's got 2 more years left on that contract. It is easily tradable, as you know the A's are cheap. Maybe you trade him and you want to call up some of the young guys. You want to call up a Soderstrom. Granted, he's an okay fielder, I guess. He has some positional versatility. Maybe you want that because you've got some other catcher in mind. Maybe a Daniel Susac, who really isn't that good either. Or a William Simone, who also isn't that good. Oh my goodness, this team is really bad. But when it's in this situation, you probably want to just either go with whoever is the most experienced. Maybe you want to go with who is going to give you the best chance to win, or even them alone just getting better, because usually with rebuilding teams, they're bad. They're bad for a reason. You know, they either don't have any major league talent, or their minor league talent is so depleted that they kind of just sign veterans off the scrap heap, kind of like the Pirates and the A's have done already in the past couple years. There's a 5-man logjam here for first base. Seth Brown hits righties and hits for pretty damn good power against him, is a good fielder, has positional versatility, can play first in all of the outfield positions, and is a lefty for whatever that is worth for you. Maybe you don't care about whether a guy hits lefty-handed or right-handed, or even as a switch hitter. Maybe you don't care about having a lineup that's all righties. Jesus Aguilar, he's got some power, and actually looks like he's declining. I could have sworn his power was higher than that, but SDS. That's actually not bad at all. He actually is a viable player, and you only got him on here for a year, so you can keep him up at the major league level, have Seth Brown be the starter. He does have 3 arbitration years. I will touch on arbitration in the offseason portion of this. Jordan Diaz, he's got 18 days of service time. The potential is probably a little off-putting. Plays multiple positions. Should probably put him in AAA. At least that's exactly what I'm going to do. Put him in AAA. It's going to use an option, but he's 22 years old. And he's more likely to get better in the minors as opposed to having him at the major league level and being a bench bat, unless you forcibly just start him over either of these two older gentlemen. Dermis Garcia, sorry, I've got a lot of cat hair, as you can see. Damn, I love felines. Cat hair all over the damn place, despite the fact I vacuumed. Anyway, Dermis Garcia, good fielder, especially for a first baseman. Has positional versatility on the corners, first and third, and is an okay hitter. 70 clutch, because this is MLB 23, that will play into, probably playing him occasionally. His clutch comes into play when there's a runner in scoring position, either second or third, and you could get a little boost as far as contact is concerned. But I am also going to send him down. We've got one guy in AAA. I don't mind having 2. One of them will probably be a DH, or maybe somebody else will at this point. And Ryan Noda. Now, I probably could cut him. It wouldn't hurt the roster at all. I'm just going to send him to AA because I don't really want the logjam at first. He also can play the corner outfield, which, again, is good. He's probably the fastest of the first baseman, but you'd have, in order to utilize it, you'd either have to put him in the outfield or, get him on base, which his batting is kind of so take that for whatever it's worth. He'll spend time in AA. Mostly in this process, you want to look at who is MLB ready right now. He's got MLB type power. Jesus Aguilar also has MLB type power. They can really go back and forth. Seth Brown can face righties. Aguilar could face lefties if you really wanted him to. He's not great, but he's not horrible. Looking at other positions, Jonah McBride can probably stay put. He's got positional versatility. He plays catcher. Do not be afraid to have a guy who can play catcher and elsewhere and send one of those other catchers down. I could definitely do that at this point. Shea Langoliers, I'm not going to do it because he's at least solid and has a damn good arm to catch the baseball. Kevin Smith is a damn good fielder at third base, actually probably our best fielder outside of Chase Peterson. I'm going to send him down because we don't need the logjam, and Jaloff is probably the next man up. So Kevin Smith will spend some time in AAA. Jaloff will be the starter at AAA as well. Tyler Wade did spend time at the major league level last year for the Angels. You very well could keep him at the major league level on this roster, which I have made no adjustments to before I jumped in. He's at AAA. He may have been hurt. I'm not 200% sure about that. I could call him up. That would leave us at 35 active, and I'd have to send somebody else down at a different position, or even just decide to send him back down anyway. Nick Allen is going to be sent down to AAA at this point, despite the fact he does hit lefties pretty well and is a damn good fielder for the shortstop position. I don't play too much into potential, though I know that can affect, that usually more so affects Sims and how fast a guy can get better. You can overcome the D potential. It takes a lot to do so, to go from D to C and then from C to B. I don't think I've seen it too often. I will run an experiment later in the year, probably not too far from now, to really see how prospects go from D to C to B, B to A. Brent Rooker in left field has major league pop. Not much of a fielder and has an okay arm. He'll stay at the major league level. I don't have any reason to send him down. JJ Bleday is the better fielder of the two. Maybe Rooker is the DH. Bleday actually plays every day, though he's not much of a fielder. Probably more of a backup guy at this point. By overall, Denzel Clark should be the guy at the major league level, but we've got guys like Esteury Ruiz, Cal Stevenson, Christian Pache, who they actually cut in real life, who, wow, he has come a far way from being in the A potential a couple games ago, as he's still a great fielder. You probably should definitely have him on your team, but damn, you got to remember, now in MLB 23, while defense matters more, it's not going to matter as much to your overall. So you gotta weigh, what you're looking for offensively or what you can get defensively. Offensively, Pache is not going to give you much, at least not unless he gets better. He is 24 years old, and because he has some service time, he should have already had an option used at this point. I'm pretty sure he got called up and sent down in Atlanta. Probably the same goes for here in Oakland, though if they cut him, it means he probably ran out of options. So this is all wrong. I've already explained that. Decided to send down the pictures and stuff off of this screen. I ain't want y'all sitting there looking all damn day. 26 are on the Major League roster. We are ready to start the season. All right, here's our first true instance of an actual injury. Jace Peterson is going to be out for 2 to 3 months with a dislocated shoulder. Because he's on the 60-day IL, he is now off the 40-man roster, which technically makes him eligible for the Rule 5 draft because he is more than 5 years removed from his date of his draft, which is 32. He's already had 6 years of service time. I think he got drafted in, I don't know, I say 2012 or something like that, or 2011. I'll put it up on the screen. You don't worry about that later. That's really not a big deal. But because he is now on the IL, he now is off the 40-man roster, and you can call somebody up to replace him. There's one other guy at his position, that is direct position, that is on the 40-man roster, that being Kevin Smith. He's okay. He's a young guy. You're not paying him much. Not that you'd be paying him more if you called him up, because in real life, if you get put on the 40-man roster, you get paid a prorated amount on a per-day basis, which really has nothing to do with this. That's more of a, you got to be a baseball fan to know that one. Jordan Diaz also plays third and is on the 40-man roster. Darius Garcia also plays third and is on the 40-man roster. Tyler Wade should be on the 40-man roster, in my opinion. I can change that. I'd have to take somebody off, or actually I can put him on and then I can call him up and he can replace Peterson at third base. It's April 15th. I didn't get an exact date as to how far into this season the trade block starts getting populated, but here are all the candidates, and actually I'm going to remove myself from it so you guys can get a very good look at it. Now, most of these guys are on other teams' 40-man rosters. Danny Jansen, Mike Soroka, the list goes on. You'll see, as you can see, the 40-man roster, the second from right below the contract numbers, a lot of these guys, if not most of these guys, are all on the 40-man roster, and you can trade for them. I wish you would just stick the contract when I scroll over to it so I don't have to keep scrolling over, whatever. Not the point. Yeah, most of these guys are on the 40-man roster, and I'm going to randomly trade for one. I'm not sure who, but y'all will see in just a second. Again, absolutely random trade. Lawrence Butler is on the 40-man roster. Joe Perez and Yanier Diaz are both on the 40-man roster for the Astros. So trading 2 for 1 doesn't affect the interest meter, but it will affect what I'll have to do afterwards. And as you can see, I run into 2 problems actually. One, I've got more guys on the active roster than I need. I've got 27 and I need 26, so they won't even let you start the game until you get that fixed, which I'm going to send down Jonah McBride in order to fulfill the 26-man roster obligation. So we got 26. We should be good to go. Or will we? Okay, we don't have a valid lineup, which, it automatically went through. I'm a little shocked because I would have thought there were 41 guys on the 40-man roster. 26 at the major leagues, 11 is 37. Damn, that's not enough. Okay, the idea was to try to get a 41st man on the roster. I can't do. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to pull it off. Usually, when you run in that situation, you have to take somebody off the 40-man roster. For instance, you take Aledmys Diaz off. Now, there are a couple of ways you can do this. Say, for instance, I want to send down Zach Jackson. He has no more minor league options left, so you're kind of in a bit of a screwed place. I can either outright release him, he comes off the 40-man roster, still got to pay him for the rest of, I think, the year and the rest of his contract, which is $3.2 million. Damn, that's a lot. For cutting a guy, but not a overwhelming ton, and it will affect your budget. I can either cut him, I can either optionally send him down, move myself out the way, AAA, AA, single A, actually AAA or AA. For some reason, single A doesn't do anything. Oh, it does, never mind. He'd have to clear optional waivers, meaning we would be putting him out there for other teams to claim, which is going to be based off of current record. How bad, actually, it's either current record or the year before. Doesn't matter. It goes in order from worst to first, just like fantasy baseball. And because of that, you might get, a team might jump over, might be ahead of you and snatch him, as opposed to you being able to do so. But because I'm putting him out there, other teams can snatch him up. And again, it depends on the record. I can either attempt to try to pass him through waivers, which I'm not going to do. If he clears optional waivers, he stays on your 40-man roster, and you don't have to worry about another team snatching him up. If you designate him for assignment, then you've got a bit of an issue. Now, he either can be outright released, he can be immediately moved from the 40-man and active roster. You have no choice over that. You'll have 7 days to trade him. You can either outright release him or put him out there on waivers and teams can claim him. Usually these kind of guys they get released. You don't have to worry about it, but you never know. If you really do want to keep him, then, well, you have to figure something out. Of course, those players are designated by the D you see next to their name. They're not active. You won't be able to play with them on any level, and you just got to wait it out for a week. Again, this kind of player, he's 28. Now, he's a good player. Somebody's going to snatch him up. At least I would think so. Somehow, some way, nobody decided to claim him, so Zach Jackson is a free agent. You can go about trying to re-sign him. Well, I don't know what player, most players in their right mind are not going to re-sign with the same team that just cut them. But he's out there and free for anybody to snatch up if they really, really want him. He is a good reliever, and he's really not old. September 1st, it's time to make some call-ups. We have 25 on the roster, so we have to have 28 for this 1 month period in order to be a legitimate roster. I'll automatically fix it because I don't really care. I'm not playing this franchise, and it'll affect your minors, so you'll have to adjust as need be. Some key takeaways from the 28-man roster situation. You can't have more than 13 pitchers, so you're always going to be outnumbered position players to pitchers. Again, you got to fall within that 10 to 13 window. So even if you get to the 28-man roster period, September 1st, if you already have 13, you can't add any more. That's why it's important not to go overboard with the amount of pitchers, especially relievers. You need position players. Position players are just gonna play. So they're gonna play more often than say pitchers, whether they're starters or relievers. Like, just make sure you have more position players. That's just the way I see it. The A's, per usual, are absolutely terrible. They finished with 107 losses. None of this really affects the 40-man roster. I just thought I'd throw it out there how terrible they are. The offseason is the most pivotal time you can lose somebody because rosters are a lot more fluid. We have 37 guys on the 40-man roster, and as you can see, the top 3 by overall are all 24 years old and beat potential. Do not just leave these guys exposed. I'm actually going to leave all 3 of them off, which means you can lose them on the Rule 5 draft. Let's see how things play out. Ohtani to San Diego. Oh boy. 15 days after the exclusive rights negotiating period, which is 5 days after the World Series, you have to figure out what your 40-man roster is going to look like, or at least it has to be set for where you like it. Remember, I left 3 guys off of it that are pretty young and pretty decently potential, so they may all get snatched up. Let's see what the Rule 5 draft has for us. Before we jump into the Rule 5 draft, look at the 40-man roster number up there. Matter of fact, let me put you right there so you can really see it. If you look at my cranium, we have 29 guys in the 40-man roster, which means we've got a lot of wiggle room to work with. The thing is, when it comes to the Rule 5 draft, these players are going to be on your major league roster, not so much on just the 40-man roster and eligible to get called up. They have to be on your major league roster, which means screw the 40-man. We've got 8 spots in which we can fill with 40-man roster eligible guys, MLB, not even MLB eligible guys, because they can have no service time and still be on that 26, 28-man roster. Here we are on the Rule 5 draft, and we have the first pick. Now, the draft keeps going until nobody picks going all the way around. So we have the first pick, and we get to choose. We cannot choose our own players. Justin Turner somehow is on here, yet I really feel like he shouldn't be. I could be wrong. He somehow hasn't used a minor league option in his Rule 5 eligible. I don't think we need a third baseman, but I will see. Now, I wish they would just show the major league roster and not the organization roster, because we don't care about the organization roster as much. We're worried about where guys are placed at Major League Baseball level. So most of these guys, who cares? I'm just going to randomly pick somebody. Oh, look, Alex Reyes. I'm sure we need a reliever. Boom. Let's take him. We lost Zach Jackson from, if you take a look, I'll roll back so we can go see it. Zach Jackson goes to the Reds. Chris Beck, whom I forget where he was before, is now a Rocky. Brett Martin has to be at the major league level as well for the Nationals, and Randy Dobnak is going to have to be for the Cardinals. We'll pick another player. Again, I'm just going to pick any old damn body. It really doesn't matter. We can't choose Zach Geloff because he's already ours. So maybe there's somebody else. Try a Hoyt Park. Who knows? Again, I'm just kind of going through the motions. Unfortunately, previously, when they tell you who's 40-man roster eligible on that front screen, unfortunately, it doesn't just give you guys who are 40-man roster eligible, which would make a decent amount more sense as opposed to you having to go through the roster, sort it by who's on the 40-man, go into the contract part of the screen, and actually have to parse out, okay, I've got this many starters, maybe I'll add another one, they're Rule 5 eligible, because remember, the player card will tell you all the way to the bottom right, Rule 5 eligible. Obviously, we're in the Rule 5 draft, so of course these players are going to be eligible. Rule 5 eligibility is based on what age you were drafted. If you are 18 and you are 5 years removed from being a draftee, you are Rule 5 eligible. If you are 19 and are 4 years removed from being drafted into professional baseball meaning you're being paid to play baseball, then you're Rule 5 eligible. So, being as they have shrunk the ages for the players, that means you've got from players, basically you draft them at 18, you have until they're 23, or if they happen to be 23, you have until they are 28 before you have to put them on the 40-man roster and deal with them from there. Some key things you need to think about when you put guys on the 40-man or even decide to take guys off. Age. Progression is going to happen to all players, so you do need to take into somewhat of an account as to where a guy is both in age and in potential. Potential, A through F, really affects to way too far of a degree how much a player gets better. If you're an A potential prospect, which a potential player in general, we don't have any at this present time. We've got B's, C's, and D's. B's, they usually go up about anywhere from 3 to 5 overall points per year. I think it should just be basically based on play, and the potential rating should be what their ceiling could be. And as a guy gets better, depending on how they're playing over a certain time frame, they can push that potential rating up. I don't ever see that, or I don't see it all that often. I've been playing this game for 17 years. Yes, a guy's potential can go up, usually not by much. Let's see, Ken Walchuk, what is his potential? It is, oh boy, wrong spot. It is, for some reason, in batting and fielding, it is an 86. So apparently the absolute best he could be is an 86 overall player. I don't think that's what it should be. That should be, scouts have determined, Major League Baseball, the GMs across the league have kind of determined, hey, this is probably the best he could be. Now, mind you, and Waldichuk is, where is he? 26 years old. He's at a 70 overall right this minute. I'd say peak is usually somewhere between, and mind you, it's a really, really wide range from, let's see, 23 to 33 years of age. I have no actual official number from SDS. This is just how I've seen it. And I don't even think 20, I think 23 is probably too young. More like 27 to 35. Most players in Major League Baseball fall within that age range, 27 to 35. Or 33, 27 to 33, 34. That's when guys have usually peaked at that point. Potential also affects decline. Now, again, I have no evidence of this, but from the one rebuild I'm still working on, guys don't seem to be regressing as badly as they get to age 32, 33, 34, 35. Like, you might be able to get away with some players playing at 36, 37. I've seen Paul Goldschmidt at the age of 37 still be like at 85, 86 overall. Potential's an A because obviously he's a Hall of Fame first baseman. But his play actually had been pretty good up until age 37. Nobody signed him in that offseason, which I think that puts him like a couple years out, 2027. And somebody signed him like very, very late in free agency. So he got a little one-year deal, and he still hit pretty solidly. I think he ended up going down to maybe like an 80 by age 38. Unfortunately, some guys stick around in that free agent pool a little too long. Like, if they're going to retire, they need to just retire. It shouldn't be some kind of threshold at like what overall they get to before they retire, or they sit on the free agent list for 5 and 6 years before they actually retire, or they go to a team, they get signed and then get cut like 2 games in because the AI can't seem to understand what a guy brings to the table of value even at that age. I don't know. These are things SDS needs to figure out. Also consider who you have on the team that might be a free agent in the upcoming years. I know that's a little much to be thinking. Not even upcoming years, the very next offseason. Everybody here is signed to a 1-year deal. Actually, those are all starters. Looking at the rest of the team, there's really nobody here with longer than a 2-year deal. So, you know, all these guys with 1-of-1 contracts, you probably don't have to think too far as to who's going to be. You probably want the best team available unless you're trading a ton of guys, which obviously you can exploit the trade system, but I don't usually do that. And you kind of want to look on their contract screen. Now, I'm going to move myself out of the way. And as you can see, Mason Miller has 2 more years of renewal, also has 3 arbitration years. Could he be a guy that you just, you know, put on the 40-man roster and, you know, let him sit there? He's gonna get better. 67 overall C potential, so C potential, he should get to about a 70 by the end of the year. Right now, he's like a low-end starter. He's a low-end starter. You can get away with putting him out there. He'll probably hold his own, do average. You know, if you're pitching with guys of C and D potential, I wouldn't throw too much stock into that, just because of the simple fact you're playing with them, so you have some control over how their career is going to go. You know, you're looking at, again, you want 5 years out, he's going to be 30. Maybe he'll peak at anywhere between a 70 and a 78, 79. 79, again, that's like a 3rd starter for some teams. Maybe that's a 4th starter for some teams. If you are in budget limbo, you want guys like this on your roster, in your organization specifically, so that you're gonna have to go through the motions. You're gonna have to go through the motions of having some guys who are ARB guys, who are C potential, not that great, not good, not bad, but just kind of just there until maybe your budget starts to ease up. Think teams like the New York Yankees, think teams like the New York Mets, teams like the Toronto Blue Jays, teams that have spent a lot of money, the Padres, teams that as franchise goes on, they are going to have a hard time signing big money free agents unless they dump a ton of money, unless they dump a ton of money in a trade and another team is willing to take it on.